All right. I want to thank everybody for being here. Most of all, our five candidates. We have Miss Edwina Winter, Mr. Jason Belton, Mr. Trav Robertson, Mr. Vincent Coe, and Miss Tiffany Boozer. Really appreciate all of you joining us today. So welcome to our 2026 primary candidate forum. I'm Charles Morris, third vice chair of the Greenville County Democratic Party. I'm going to be the moderator tonight, and we are here to have a conversation, to hear from and to ask questions of our candidates. They will each have 5 minutes at the beginning to talk about themselves, about their campaign, about why they are running, and then we will immediately move into a question and answer portion. So first up for 5 minutes is Edwina.
Well, thank you very much indeed. So, my name is Edwina Winter, and I am running for Secretary of State in the primary. Why am I running? Well, I'm running because I got afraid. As you can hear, I am not a native of South Carolina. I am a I've been living here for 14 years, in the US for 16, and have been a citizen since 2018. And one of the first things the Trump administration did when they came to power last year was to send out an executive order saying that they are going to review all naturalized citizens to see if they still want us to be in the country. And my first thought was, well, I need to go and run away and hide. And then I decided that that just made me angry. So I decided instead that I needed to stay and fight. And by staying and fighting, that meant actually standing up and running for something. And I decided Secretary of State fitted me best because it is so business oriented. And I'll talk about my business qualifications in a minute or two. But the Secretary of State has been a very quiet office for the last 24 years. We've had a Republican incumbent who has basically been missing in action for that entire 24 years. And it is definitely time for change. If you buy anything in the state, if you interact with a company that is operating in the state, if you give money to a charity or a non-profit, if you use a notary for anything like that, if you have a company, then all of those things are touched by the Secretary of State. So it's actually a very important role. One thing that the Secretary of State doesn't do is actually run elections. Since 1969, that has been run by an independent elections commission, non-partisan, and I think that's very important that it stays that way. But the Secretary of State does sit on some influential committees and can influence some legislation. So very business oriented. I decided that I really wasn't the baby kissing sort of person, so I decided that was probably best suited to me. Why am I qualified? Well, I have 38 years of global business experience. I've worked in the UK, Europe, China, Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, and of course, the US. Very much in highly regulated industries like the nuclear industry, where accountability, transparency is really important, where you can't make mistakes or say, oops, I forgot. And really just decided that that was also very helpful for something like the Secretary of State, which is all about transparency, accountability, proper record keeping, and making sure that compliance is a very important part of that role. I'm also a local business person. I have a business that I formed in South Carolina, so I'm a small business owner, and I'm also a non-profit founder. I founded a Christian non-profit as well in the state. So I think I understand all of those things that the Secretary of State's office touches and how it can be done better. I have a vision for South Carolina. I think that we need to be doing an awful lot more for small businesses all over the state, helping them reduce their tax burden. We allow lots of big businesses into the state who get tax breaks and small businesses don't. If people have a good idea, they should be able to form a new business really, really quickly and easily and cheaply. And it shouldn't matter that you can't get to Columbia. We should be having offices set up in libraries, maybe all over the state, or a road show every month or so that people can set up those businesses, because small businesses are the backbone of the state. That's the place where generational wealth is created. And that is so important. If you have generational wealth, people can buy houses, they can send their kids to school, they can buy health insurance, and those attract other businesses, and the state grows and benefits. Another thing that I see for the Secretary of State is improving the ability for people to understand where their money is going, both to charities. Is this a legitimate charity? Are you giving money to somebody who's going to use it for the purpose you think it's going to be used for? Or are they just a shell company that's going to take your money away? So more fraud and scam education, particularly for our seniors, and making it very accountable and transparent as to who owns businesses, where the money is coming from. There is no beneficial ownership legislation in this state. Do we actually know where our money is going to? Do we know who is lobbying in the State House? Do we know who is doing deals in the dark? And really, those are things that I think the Secretary of State can really bring some benefit to. And that is why I hope that people will be interested in looking me up. If they can, look at winterforthewin.com. You can learn a lot more about me, and it's there that you can sign up to volunteer or to donate. Any questions, please get in touch, and I will be delighted to talk to anybody else. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Edwina. Mr. Jason Belton, you're next. You have 5 minutes.
Greetings, everybody. I believe Ms. Winter already adequately put out, a lot what the Secretary of State does and a lot what I usually say on stumps. But I'm going to get to the brass task. Right now, corporations, big companies have been draining all of our resources out of South Carolina. We have a lot of fraudulent organizations that have been selling identifications to the black market. This has to stop. I get emotional when I talk about these things because I've been in these communities for over 10 years, working with these local nonprofits and local businesses who've been starved out and marginalized from the process here, drained from resources, because these corporations come here, they suck up all the funds, and there's nothing left. But when we talk about mental health, when we talk about homelessness, a lot of our mental health patients are being sent to jail because the nonprofits that are in these communities are not well funded to do their job. And that's why I jumped into this race. And to get down to business, one thing's for sure. Right now, this is party business. This is primary business. We have to get exciting candidates that's going to bring out the masses of people who've been missing from the voter process. That's what I've been doing for 10 years, organizing in these marginalized and disenfranchised communities. And now I've stepped to the front to show them you can do it. And I believe if you vote for me in November, I will crush Mark Hannon. Thank you all for listening to me. I am at another venue, and I want no disrespect to the Greenville party, but I love our Dems. We have work to do, and I'm totally here to make sure that we win. We can win this, guys. I know we can win this. Thank you, and thank you, Brother Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Jason. So those were our 2 Secretary of State candidates. We will move on to State Treasurer, Mr. Trav Robertson.
Good evening, Charles. Thank you so much for having us, albeit virtually. We had a great event up there the other night, and Vincent and I are probably worn out from traveling the state. But my name is Trav Robertson. I am originally from Anderson, South Carolina. And so, as I've mentioned on the road, I'm the proud child of a public school teacher of almost 48 years and a clinical psychologist with the Department of Mental Health. And my mom and dad imparted on my sisters and I that, you have to live within your means. You have to have a budget and you have to have a plan. If you don't, you're going to have to sacrifice something, and it may put your entire plan in jeopardy. Right now, people in this state are struggling. They're struggling to buy a pack of chicken that was once $15 and now is maybe $29. They're struggling to buy a dozen eggs, a gallon of milk, much less fill up a car with a tank of gas to go to work. We pay Curtis Loftus $165,000 a year. We give him a defined benefit program. We give him healthcare, dental, vision. We even pay for him to have a gas card because we give him a free car. And that's because he only has one job. And that job is to put our money into the right bank account, manage the earnings on those investments, and report that to the Board of Economic Advisor and the General Assembly so they can appropriate that money correctly. That money coming in is not his. It's an extra shift that's worked to pay for a kid going through college. It's overtime. And the simple truth is he lost $1.8 billion. And this man believes that he deserves to be reelected. He deserves another car. Grady Patterson, the longtime state treasurer, taught me how to run this office. He taught me how to manage the finances. He taught me how to manage the people's money. And so my hope is that all of those listening to this tonight and in the future will join me to restore financial transparency, financial stability to the state treasurer's office. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trav. Up next, we have Mr. Vincent Coe.
Tara's coming off mute. So great to be with you all. Vincent Coe. I'm running to be the next treasurer for the state of South Carolina. A bit about myself. I am a former bank examiner, having worked at the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation following the financial crisis in 2008. And I'm also a former Federal Bank of Atlanta bank examiner as well. In my experience as former bank examiner, I have developed a certain level of skills, knowledge, experience, but overall, I would say temperament to really manage a, let's just call it what it is, a very large financial institution. That's what the Office of Treasurer is. I believe that given my unique set of skills, my unique background, that I'm prepared on day one to pick up where we have been lagging for many, many years. As Trav outlined, some of the duties of the Office of Treasurer. One of the things I'm very interested in is to be responsive to the taxpayers, right? Because at the end of the day, it's their money. It is not the state of South Carolina's money. It is the taxpayers' money. My number one goal is to ensure that we are able to report accurate information and working closely with the Comptroller General's office. As Tiffany here is online, she knows quite well the fruits that come from having a great relationship, collaborative relationship with the Comptroller General's office and the Treasurer's office. That right now I think is lacking, that just given the dynamics. As was mentioned, there's about $1.8 billion that came up missing. And I think that deserves accountability. I think those questions need to be answered. And certainly, Mr. Loftus may not be himself the only one that's accountable, but he is the head of the state treasurer's office. And I think he needs to be the person that is being able to respond to that level of mismanagement. In the banking sector, if that kind of let's just say error, I won't even say $1 million. If that kind of money were to end up being misreported, missing, et cetera, we're talking about someone that would no longer have a job. And as a matter of fact, the General Assembly, the Senate last year basically took a vote of no confidence and voted to remove Mr. Loftus from office. That's a separate and apart from his duties. They basically, again, that's a no vote of no confidence. So I think the message has been set. I think it is time for a change. I think it's time for someone who has the ability to lead. I believe that is myself. Again, I bring a certain level of unique skills and have the right temperament to help move our state forward. Because at the end of the day, what we report, and I think Tiffany can answer this much clearer, it needs to be based on accurate information. So our position, our financial position, our ratings and so forth, that needs to be based on information that can be substantiated, information that can be proven. And if there is any doubt or any second guessing, that goes a long way in terms of our credibility and our ability to even lend money and so forth. So I do believe that now is the time. I believe that I'm the right person for this extraordinary role. At the end of the day, the state treasurer should be and is the watchdog of taxpayer money. And I know how to track the numbers. I know how to follow the numbers. And I believe that it is time for there to be greater accountability. If folks can go to my website and vincentforsc.com, I lay out kind of like on a ledger, kind of the issues that are at play. We're talking about the state pension plan. We're talking about college savings plans. We're talking about just the various $800 or so million of unclaimed money that needs to be back into the hands of the rightful owners. So if you go to my website and look at vincentforsc.com, you'll see I have those things laid out, and as well as my what I call the Palmetto Promise. That is what I will be able to commit to on day one and get this job done. So I greatly appreciate it, and I ask folks to continue to be engaged. And thank you for the opportunity tonight, Charles.
Of course. Thank you, Vincent. And next, for the Office of Comptroller General, we have Ms. Tiffany Boozer.
Thank you, Charles. Unlike the others, I kind of have to jump right into a lesson. I have to teach you what a Comptroller General is first. I would love to just give you a whole big spiel of how awesome I am and where I come from, but I don't have time. So I'm going to hop right in. So what is the Comptroller General's office? What do we do? Most people don't know what the Comptroller General is. A lot of folks don't even understand the terminology. So the Comptroller General is just a very, very fancy word to say the state's accountant. We have 4 primary duties for the state of South Carolina. Number one, we provide accounting guidance for all of the agencies, state entities. We provide guidance on how to utilize our state accounting system. We have a department that handles that. We also process payroll on behalf of South Carolina for all state employees. So we process those payments as well. We also have the accounts payable department. We process payments on behalf of South Carolina. So all the bills that are paid on behalf of South Carolina, they come through our office, and each payment that goes out goes through an audit, if you will, or a multi-point inspection, if you will. Every payment that is made on behalf of South Carolina is examined to ensure certain criteria is met. And just as a caveat to that, I would like to note, because you may hear rhetoric saying otherwise, the accounting office does not decide how a state agency or any appropriations are spent. We have no horse in that race whatsoever. If you're probably going to hear that as folks are out on the trail, that is absolutely not true. We are the accountants. It's our responsibility to ensure that the books of South Carolina are accurate and in line with GASB guidance. And so the fourth thing that we do, we process and we create the financial statements for the state of South Carolina. And so you may say, unless you're a state of South Carolina employee, how does that affect me as a South Carolina taxpayer? Well, as it relates to the financial statements of South Carolina, we have to have a clean audit. If we do not have a clean audit, it will cause our interest rates to increase. And if interest rates increase, it will, it'll affect our credit rating. If our credit rating is not good, interest rates go up, taxes go up, and that affects every taxpayer in the state of South Carolina. So it is very important, number one, that we have competent leadership. Again, this is an accounting office. And just my little 2 cents on it, while, since I have the floor, I do believe that this role and the treasurer's office role either should be appointed roles or they should be, I don't believe that we should be selecting a party. They should be nonpartisan because these are business roles. They have no dealings on how things are done. We have a responsibility account for the money, and the treasurer has a responsibility to have that money and know where it is and in what bank accounts it is in. So we have an independent role, but when it's put on the ballot as red or blue, folks do not comprehend that 1 + 1 is just 2. It is not red or blue. It is just 2. So these are professional roles that should be filled with competent people. And, you know, going into why you should vote for me, I am currently the internal auditor at the Comptroller General's office. And I know the thought is, where were you when the 1.8, got missing? I was not there. My role was created as a solution, as one of the many solutions to ensure that something like that does not happen in the future. Prior to my role, there was no internal audit. There was no quality review of particularly as it relates to the financial accounting. There weren't. This role didn't exist. And another reason you should vote for me is because I am a certified public accountant. This is not something I just picked up and said, hey, I think I'm going to do it. No, this is what I have. My bachelor's is in accounting. My master's is in accounting. And my career experience has been audit. So I know what questions to ask. I know what I'm looking at when I'm looking at financial statements. I know what needs to be examined, how it should look. So that is why I believe you should vote for me. I already understand the intricacies of the agency. I can pick up the ball and start running now. I don't have to do on-the-job training for this role. So that's about all I have. You can visit me at boozerforsc.com. If you send me an inquiry, if you send me a question, I get back to you immediately, or very, very, very quickly. I should say that instead of immediately. And you can volunteer on there if you like, and you can also donate as well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tiffany. And I appreciate all of you for your opening statements. So we're going to move into a Q&A portion. I've got just a couple questions for everybody. We're going to go in the same order. So in order to make sure nobody is sitting too long or, whatever, we're going to go in the same order, one question at a time, and then we'll go back through the order for the second question, if everybody's okay with that. So I'm going to come back to Miss Edwina, our first Secretary of State candidate. So you've emphasized your background as a small business owner. What is a specific change you would like to make to the filing process to help local entrepreneurs start and stay in business more easily?
Okay, so our current Secretary of State hasn't actually done a bad job in the filing process. However, what I would do is I would make it more accessible to people who, for example, cannot go to Columbia to go to the office. I would try and bring the Secretary of State's office out to the people where they are, so that if they don't have a vehicle or they have very limited time, they can go to the office and walk away with their LLC that day rather than having to wait for it. I would also make it cheaper. Right now, the Secretary of State pulls in about $14 million a year in fees from small businesses as they register, which I think is far too much. They should certainly be able to do it for a lot cheaper than that. I would also make sure that those filing forms were available in multiple languages. We have a very strong immigrant community who often want to set up businesses and are put off by the fact that it maybe not be particularly friendly to them in their particular language. I think that's also very important. And more importantly than anything, I would make sure that there was somebody there to actually answer the phone. So making it easier is what I would try and make it do, and more accessible.
Thank you, Edwina. And I'm just going to go back a second. I apologize, everybody. We've got 2 minutes for each question response, and I forgot to state that. But thank you, Edwina. You were definitely under that. I appreciate that. We're going to move to Mr. Jason Belton next. This is a role that a lot of times is seen as administrative. What do you think is the most important thing you can do to make state government feel more transparent and accessible to the average person?
Charles, I believe he left. He left
Yep,
a
he's
message.
gone. I can hear him singing upstairs.
You know what? Since you're our Secretary of State candidate, I will move on. I apologize. I did not notice that he had left. All right, we're going to move to the state treasurers, Mr. Trav. What's the first step you would take to address, the concerns that have come up from multiple people now regarding tracking state funds and making sure that that is more transparent?
Well, I think the first issue is we have to determine whether he's lost the money, whether it's an accounting error. So I would more than likely communicate or at least bring together a transition team that consisted of previous employees of the South Carolina State Treasurer's Office. I know that there are at least 4 or 5 individuals who have 30 plus years in that office who left because of the manner in which Curtis Loftus runs the office. I'd bring those individuals together, coupled with the staff of the Comptroller General's office and the Comptroller General. We would sit down, we would discuss, we would figure out exactly where this money is, what's happened to it, what we can do to prevent that in the future. You remember, Grady Patterson was off treasurer for 38, 40 years, and there was never a problem with the accounting or where the money was. Once we determine that, I think the next step would be to convene a meeting in South Carolina of the various credit rating agencies and probably alleviate any concerns that the Securities and Exchange Commission has as it relates to this, because all of that is going to affect our bonding capacity and leveraging that debt to build infrastructure in South Carolina.
Thank you, Trav. To Vincent, you talked about your banking experience. So how would you apply that to better manage the state's multi-billion-dollar pension liability and protect the retirement of those state employees who may be relying on that pension?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, as mentioned, as a former bank examiner, that's one of the things that I was challenged or tasked to do, is to ensure that the so on a safety and soundness standpoint, because there's really two frames of thought. From the pension, the current pension system is about $24 billion underfunded. And so what that requires, or would require, is to ensure that there is a plan to have the pension fund funded to capacity within a reasonable or within a fair amount of time. We were listening, just so happened to attend the gubernatorial forum last night, and I heard one of the gentlemen was saying, well, we need a 100-year plan. And I don't think we necessarily need a 100-year plan for our pension system, but I do think we need a strategic plan that basically has several objectives or several key items that need to be addressed to ensure that the pension system is funded, right? So if that means we look at other modern vehicles to invest in, but also making sure that they are fiscally sound and not irresponsible, because what you don't want to do is gamble on folks' retirement benefits or retirement income, and it could basically be nothing at the end, right? So you want to make sure that you are using those vehicles that would be able to produce a reasonable return, and making sure that the pension system is funded and able to withstand and be able to provide the longevity or the long-term benefits that the retirees would need. And so I have the capability, have the ability to do that and meet with the various folks and making sure that happens.
And Charles, I'd like to respond to that question as well, since it was vastly different than the one you asked me. And I think that, quite frankly, there have been a lot of people who use that unfunded liability to scare folks. And we have to understand that there are essentially 2 or 3 different retirement systems. One is the defined benefit program that the Republicans are trying to starve on the vine and cut out. They've moved everybody, especially new state employees, to a 401k type retirement plan. But we also have to look at the rate of return on that defined benefit program. That rate of return sets and can determine what that unfunded liability is. And for years, It has been a political tool and a political ploy by Republicans and individuals to scare people and saying there's this massive unfunded liability. The second thing is this: just in a short time span, 2004, 2005, 2006, we've gone from managing the state retirement program $25.1 billion for $500,000 a year to now paying over $60 to $180 million a year. Now, we don't know the exact number because the state retirement system actually can operate under the veil of darkness, and they don't have to FOIA that. But there are some other things that can be done as it relates to this unfunded liability, and we don't really know who's actually creating that number and for what purpose. But for years, there has been an attack on the state retirement of the civil servants of South Carolina, and that unfunded liability has been used. Just remember, it was only in 2004, maybe 2005, that South Carolina's retirement system, the defined benefit, was the only system in the United States of America that made a profit. And at that time, we were limited by the Constitution of this state as to how much we invested in a volatile stock market and how much we invested in fixed income. So at the end of the day, I think that it is, and I'm not trying to be disingenuous, I think we need to know exactly what we're talking about when we talk about unfunded liabilities. Are we talking about the 401k system? We talking about the police and judges and the firemen who get a separate system? Or are we talking about the defined benefit program that they've been trying to starve to death for years?
Now, if I can just offer a quick rebuttal, and I appreciate Trav kind of laying that out. I kind of want to go piggyback a little bit of what Tiffany just said, that I don't think we should label things Republican, Democrat. Money is money, and I think it needs to add up and make sure that it is whatever the plan is, that it is inclusive of the citizens or the beneficiaries. When we talk about defined benefit, so there's a distinction, right? So there's defined benefit, and then there's also defined contribution. Study risk management in undergrad, so I know exactly what I'm talking about here. So when Trav kind of throws that term out, more modernly, we have shifted away from defined benefit plans to defined contributions, because you basically, to that point, if it is a defined benefit, that means it needs to be funded by the time it is, time to collect the funds. But if you move away into a defined contribution schema, I would say you don't worry so much about there being that massive unfunded liability. So whatever we call it is whatever we call it. I think at the end of the day, what we need to ensure is that the retirees have a retirement benefit when they retire. They don't need to be wondering whether or not their retirement benefits are there or not there. I want to make sure that their retirement benefits are there when it's time for them to retire. That's the bottom line. Thank you.
Right, and I just want to respectfully say this.
Hold on. Hey, Trav. Sorry, we've had a question and a rebuttal for both of you. I'd like to get to Tiffany if you don't mind. Well, everybody, we'll come back through again, and everybody will have a question. There will be time to speak further, and then we can get conversational as well. So, Tiffany, you talked about transparency a lot. So how will you, as the chief accountant of the state, ensure that the financial data on the transparency dashboard is not only up to date, but is easy for somebody who's not an accountant to understand?
I love that you actually mentioned the transparency dashboard, because it's so much rhetoric saying that it doesn't exist. That was actually created under Gaines' leadership, or under the current Comptroller General's leadership. So I'm very grateful that you actually mentioned that. So go, Charles. What I would add to that, because I do realize it is a lot of data. And they have it broken out at the state level and then by agency, by category. What I would add to that is high risk areas, like, for example, capital projects. I would definitely believe we should add year over year analysis to that. for about maybe 5 year where you can see it in graph form, where, how we're moving about in categories at the agency level and at the state level. And I would even go a step further with my auditor hat on, identify the high risk areas. For, again, like I said, capital projects is something that is kind of high risk because you expected it to cost this much, and then you have cost overruns and things like that. I would want to have a little bit more detail available on the high risk areas, so where you can quickly see in graph form, hey, this is going up, this much was budgeted, this is where we are right now. So just to make that a little bit easier to read, I would definitely add some graph and add that year over year analysis to the existing dashboard.
Thank you, Tiffany. And I appreciate that you loved my question. Thank you. I worked really hard on these, I promise. Ms. Edwina, since the Secretary of State oversees charitable registrations, how will you use that authority to stop fraudulent charities from targeting vulnerable citizens, especially our elder citizens?
He's left too, according to the chat. I'm sorry.
She sure has. I'll tell you what, Trav, you're next. What did you want to say?
I think that it is easy to say that this is not a Republican versus Democratic issue, but I was the deputy state treasurer when the attempt was made to completely dismantle and change the state retirement system. And that some are positive changes, some are negative changes, but I want to be very clear about this. My mom and dad would have made millions of dollars in the private sector, but my mother felt called to be a public school teacher. My dad felt called to be a clinical psychologist working for the Department of Mental Health. They weren't the sexiest of jobs, and they sure didn't get rich doing it. But that retirement that Vincent spoke about, and it is the part of the reason they did it, but most importantly, it was the one benefit other than enriching the lives of other people. And I think we've got to be very clear when we couch this. All of the Republicans in the legislature, all of the Republican constitutional offices that have railed against our defined benefit program are all recipients invested in that defined benefit program. What they did was they said, this is good for us. We're cutting it off. We're no longer going to feed it because of an alleged unfunded liability, and we're going to create a volatile 401k system. And I think to Vincent's point, we, the Comptroller General, the state treasurer, have to make sure that we're vigilant that that money is going to be there for those who invested in the future, in the deferred compensation and the state retirement system. But let's be very clear, we don't manage that money. There's been an entire bureaucracy created that takes care of that now.
So I'll tell you what, I'm going to ask the same question to both of you. I'm going to start with Vincent this time. Vincent, how would you modernize the state's college savings programs to make them, more practical and attainable for working class families?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. As a matter of fact, I was talking to a colleague about this earlier. So I believe there are a number of things that can be modernized because we now have the ability, I won't say ability, we have, let's say the possibility that let's say a child, you plan for your child's education, you invest the money when they're very young, and obviously you have I would say a good chunk, or you have the vast majority of it by the time that they are ready to go to college. Okay, well, what happens if that child gets a full scholarship and they basically college is taken care of? So what then happens to that money at that time? Like, do parents have the ability to reinvest it into a Roth IRA, or do they have the ability to put it into some other single pay or insurance vehicle to gain the same amount of interest and so forth? So I think there is some changes that I think need to be made in terms of even the fee structure, and I believe there's different tiers and so forth, where if the child is older, so if the parents are entering them into this savings plan at a later age, then it's probably going to be more expensive versus if they did it when they were younger, right? And so I think there's some opportunities for us to modernize it, but I think the key element here is to listen to the parents to see what they want, what is most beneficial to them, because at the end of the day, it is their money. It's their money that they're storing away for their children's education, and whatever they prioritize as being, what they want that money to be spent on and where they want it ultimately should be their decision, because again, it's their money, and the state treasurer is just the custodian or like the trustee for them. So I want to ensure that they have a voice and they are able to have a voice in how that money is being managed. And if there needs to be some changes and some overhauls and so forth, they need to be at the table.
Trav, same question to you. 2 minutes, please.
Vincent's exactly right. And I think the first thing is to work with the General Assembly to make sure that there's a tax exemption or a tax structure that coincides with what the federal regs are. The second is that we're going to have to convene the universities at some point to have some discussions. And then I think that there's, Vincent's right, there needs to be some type of insurance annuity or tax annuity that we can roll this money over into to take care of the children. When I was the deputy state treasurer, we had the tuition prepayment program that was separate than the 529 programs of today. And one of the things that I learned when the General Assembly cut the money that was paying our colleges and universities, they knew exactly how much money students were getting in federal loans and Pell Grants and whatnot at that time. And so they would raise it to the maximum level so that that student had no money on which to live, or to do some other things. I think that one of the things we're going to, as a whole, in this state and in this country, is determine how we're going to fund our universities, but also we're going to need to make sure that they're willing partners in this instead of the corporate nature that they've become. But I think those are three things. We've got to make sure the tax code allows it, the federal and state and tax code. We've got to get the universities on board, and we've got to allow for some type of rollover, whether it's an insurance annuity that covers the student while they're there, that can then be rolled over into some type of tax annuity or something of that nature.
And
awesome.
Charles, would I be able to add just one more thing too? I forgot to mention, and because Trav made a good point too about the sort of the convening the colleges and universities. Well, then there's also, a lot of parents now are sending their children to private schools. I'm a proponent of public education. I'm a product of public education, so I support it 100%. However, for those parents who have kids where they are putting them through private school and so forth, again, it is their money. So being able to, if there is flexibility and so forth, for them to use that money in their secondary education, I think that's something we should also consider too. Again, listening to the parents to give their opinion to see if that's what they want, because ultimately, again, it's their money and we're just the manager of it.
And be a proponent of expanding what that money can be used for in the terms of education, because education, that definition is expanding so rapidly.
Sure.
As we move forward.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate both of you for thoroughly answering that question. Let's move to Tiffany. And of course, Tiffany, if you ever have any insight on these, please feel free as well, since, these offices do have to work closely together. You work in the Comptroller General's office. You're on the front line. What is the biggest bottleneck you've seen, and what would you tackle on the first day if you're in charge of the office and not just working in it? Oh, there we go.
Okay. Two bottlenecks that I would say. The biggest bottleneck, and I think both Trav and Vincent alluded to this, the two offices has to be collaborative. They are two sides of the same coin. And at this current state, that does not exist. So that is a major bottleneck. It's a lot of tension there. And it's just it just creates a very difficult working condition as it relates to two groups or two agencies that are two sides of the same coin. And we just can't seem to move forward. And I just kind of want to just throw this in here. And I spoke about this yesterday. We definitely need a change because I think that our former Comptroller General Ekstrom and even the former Auditor Kennedy, both of them took their level of responsibility as it relates to the 1.8 billion. They both accepted their roles in it, and they both, hey, let me move out of the way and allow somebody else to come in, take a fresh look, and go ahead and make the corrections that are necessary. That has not happened in the treasurer's office, and it's a constant blame game. There is zero accountability whatsoever, and it creates a difficult working environment when you have one of the three that refuses to accept any level of responsibility. So I think just the working condition between the two offices is one of our greatest bottlenecks. And then the second bottleneck, I would say, is just some of the, I believe, we are transitioning. We were able to purchase a new system as it relates to our financial reporting. So we are migrating over to more of an electronic preparation as it relates to our financial statements. So, but that takes time, just migrating everything over and just getting all of that moved over in a clean and more efficient and an updated way. So I don't even know if I want to even call that a bottleneck, or rather just a growing pain with moving from more of a manual system to more of an electronic system, to try to remove as much of the people touches as possible so that we can have a little information that's more reliable and easier to access.
Thank you, Tiffany. I appreciate y'all's time. We are coming up on about an hour. So what I'll say is we'll move to our closing statements. Everybody will get 2 minutes, and we'll start with Mr. Trav.
Thank you very much. And I want to say, I think Tiffany hit the nail on the head, and I would like to say something I think that Vincent would agree with. And that is that we probably both believe that the money in the Future Scholar program should not be used for advertising for the incumbent in illegal in-kind campaign contributions. And I do think that Curtis Loftus should accept some responsibility, if not all of it. Remember, Curtis Loftus stood in front of the state Senate and said, your money is as good as there. You've already appropriated $500 million. The simple truth is this is not a race between me and Vincent Coe. Vincent and I both want the same thing. We just happen to be two different people. We know how this office should be run. We know how to work with other people. We know how to work with the Comptroller General. We know how to work with the General Assembly to make sure that you have a functioning state treasurer's office that provides financial stability, financial security, and financial transparency. And so my hope is that your folks watching this will go to Trav Robertson or travfortreasurer.com and take a look. And if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to call on me. I appreciate you having us tonight. And you've asked some very thoughtful and intelligent questions. I think that Tiffany and Vincent and I will recognize that that's not always the case. But thank you very much for doing your homework and asking those questions.
Well, thank you, Trav. I appreciate that. And I just do what Stacey Mars tells me to do. Mr. Vincent, Mr. Vincent, you got 2 minutes, sir.
Awesome. Well, Charles, I just want to just thank you, you and Stacey both, for the opportunity to be able to to share a little bit more about my platform this evening. Lots of good discussion, and I think lots of good debates. And I just from sitting and listening, the fact of the matter is, there's qualification on this call. We have the necessary skills to help move South Carolina forward. And I really do believe, I just want to underscore what Tiffany had said about folks who have already accepted responsibility. Whatever their part was has already been done. The last piece has not been done. I think the current incumbent for treasurer is not accepted full responsibility. And I think if the intention is to do what is in the best interest of the state of South Carolina, it is to step aside and move and let there be some new accountability, greater transparency, and greater stability for the state of South Carolina. Because it's not about any one person; it is the collective roles that we play, and the ability for us to have the working relationships and to collaborate. I do believe that this is the right time. I think South Carolina is in a great position to reach the potential that is truly hers. Our state is continuing to grow. 5.5 million people here. The treasurer oversees about $70 billion annually, and I believe that I have the capability to help manage that money, to be that watchdog, to make sure that people are being accountable and holding myself accountable, right? Because I'm not without error. So, right. So just making sure that we have those levels of accountability and being able to communicate that in a way that is so that people of South Carolina know that their money is being protected and their interests are being protected. You can go to vincentforsc.com, check out my website, check out my platform, and I'm always available to answer any and all questions from the voters. And I thank you all again for letting me be here.
Thank you, Vincent. Ms. Tiffany, you have 2 minutes.
I too want to thank you all for this opportunity, and the questions were really good. Again, you knew about that transparency portal, so woot woot. My final thoughts are, is that now that folks are kind of now paying attention to particularly the Comptroller General and the State Auditor's Office, I just really want to drive home that these are indeed professional offices. And at no point, as long as this position is elected, at no point, unless it's a unique situation, at no point should the accounting office not be under the oversight of an accountant. It's just really that simple to me. I believe that if we allow red and blues to make the decision for us as it relates to the business of South Carolina, I don't believe the 1.8, what will happen in the future, 1.8 will be a drop in the bucket, because none of the issues of South Carolina matter. Whether you're concerned about housing, whether you're concerned about affordability, whether you're concerned about food, insurance, whatever it is that you're concerned about, none of that works. Our legislators, our General Assembly, there's nothing they can do about it if we do not ensure that the business of South Carolina is taken care of. We cannot help anybody if the money is not correct. So those are my closing thoughts. Again, I bring a wealth of knowledge to this role as an internal auditor, or as an auditor, career auditor, really. Everything has to make sense. It has to. If it doesn't, we got to figure out how to make it make sense. And so I believe that my skill set is just what this office needs in terms of things that we've been doing the same way for the last 20 years, things that need to be reimagined, things that there are new ways or better ways to make it more efficient, to make it better. I think we should definitely utilize all of those sources to make these two offices as good as they can be. And we definitely need to bring them up to 2026, because I believe both of them are probably way back, just too far. So again, as I stated before, if you have any questions, any concerns, feel free to reach out to me at boozerforsc.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. And I just want to say thank you for joining us. Thank you for answering the questions. Thank you for telling us about your qualifications, your expertise, and your vision for better managing the money of the people of South Carolina. Good luck to all of you in your campaign.
And Charles, if I may jump in before you end, I'm sorry. Hey guys, this is Stacey. I'm sorry I wasn't able to be on the call from the beginning this evening. Apparently, our House of Representatives and Senate is debating on whether they want to redraw our maps, and so I had to get on an emergency call. But I do want to thank all of you for stepping up to run. It's not easy. I know it's not. It's time consuming. You have to talk to a lot of people, and some of them are crazy, but you've put your hat in the ring. We so appreciate it. Like I said, just thank you so much. And I hope that if nothing else comes out of this, that people are educated on the different roles of government. And so y'all have a great evening. Y'all know where to find us if you ever need us. And good luck on the trail.